In the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, the hero of Kvatch passes through sewers, major cities, verdant landscapes and forests, dark caves, hellish plains of oblivion, some guy's house that you're not supposed to be in, but none of these places come even close to imitating the enticing and mysterious nature of the Shivering Isles. Sheogorath's realm, a world from a different time, a place where you don't want to stay and yet you hesitate to leave. And sure, it's supposed to be strange. After all, it is Sheogorath's realm of madness. But what is it about the environment, its inhabitants, its nature and its rules that make this deranged world so charming and alluring? Why does a place that has no business being beautiful look this good? Today, we're going to explore the strange beauty of the Shivering Isles. Before we get started, hi, my name is Angelika, and everywhere starts looking like the Shivering Isles if you've read enough Elder Scrolls. Luckily, I am nowhere near that point. First of all, I want to address something that I said at the very beginning of this video. The Shivering Isles are a world from a different time. I have this theory about the Shivering Isles that they are not following the same time that Nirn or the Mortal Plane does. In fact, I have reason to believe that the Isles are in a timeline of their own. Sometime in the future where they're already more advanced than those that dwell on Nirn, perhaps as a reflection of a future Nirn? Now, wherever their timeline is at during the events of the late Third Era, I do believe it runs parallel to that of Nirn's, but just in an existence of its own and, again, in a more advanced future. I say this because of how the inhabitants of the Isles are dressed versus what the people of Cyrodiil are wearing. I did a whole video on the clothing of Oblivion if you want to check that out, but I have a section in that particular video which I dedicated to the Shivering Isles and the differences between the style there and Cyrodiil. In Cyrodiil, the people are dressed in this medieval style reminiscent of Europe in the Middle Ages, mixed with some Renaissance influence as well. On the Isles, the people wear clothing that is closer to what we saw in the Victorian era. So in our real-world comparison, that is a difference of about 400 years. This is why for me, as somebody who's interested in those particular historical periods, entering the Shivering Isles is always a bit of a shock to the system, as dramatic as that sounds. And you immediately meet Haskill with his large Victorian collar and a face only a mad god could love. The Isles get a very memorable introduction. After you've already sat down with Haskill and he takes his leave, the room around you disintegrates into a show of light and a million butterflies swarm towards you, almost as if they're breaking the fourth wall, and they reveal the realm in all its splendor for the very first time. Those butterflies leave an indelible impression on you as the player, and it isn't just for the purpose of creating a pleasant image either. Butterflies are the symbols of transformation, rebirth and renewal, fluttering through the cycles of life. This can indeed be seen as foreshadowing, a nod towards the oncoming Grey March. If you didn't know, the Grey March is an event that takes place at the end of an era where Jiggalag, the Daedric Prince of Order, comes to undo Sheogorath's realm, forcing him to build it again afterwards. Jiggalag was cursed by the other Daedric princes who were intimidated by the power he had across realms and dimensions, and so he became tethered to Sheogorath. As if in mockery, at the end of every era, the Prince of Madness becomes or transforms into the Prince of Order, and in cycles they destroy and rebuild the Shivering Isles. That is, of course, until the cycle is broken, but this is a story for a different time. To bring us back to the beauty of the Isles, there are a couple of things that you immediately notice when the butterflies have gone. Mainly, that would be the giant mushroom trees and the skies. The trees, first of all, are like those that we see on Vardenfell in the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. However, there is something more sinister about them. There are two varieties, the ones that you see on the Mania side and the ones from the Dementia side. I don't want to get into the specifics of either side just yet, but the trees across the board loom above the player in such an exaggerated and almost tyrannical fashion with their sharp wooden spikes surrounding the heads. In their own way, they bring together this idea of a mad world, or a bad trip after ingesting some psychedelic mushrooms. Looking up towards the sky, we have the daytime and the nighttime versions. During the day, the sky is this particular shade of blue with almost a greenish hue, somewhere between that and turquoise, and this feels unnatural, especially after you've become accustomed to seeing the blue skies above Cyrodiil. The clouds are also golden, and so you cannot help but stare when you notice it at first. If you're lucky enough to come to the Isles for the first time during the night, you will instead bear witness to some of the most breathtaking views of the sky and the purple stellar formations that can only be perceived in this particular way from the Shivering Isles. Unlike Cyrodiil, the sky feels very low here, almost as if it's sitting right on top of you, which is both terrifying and beautiful. You will first come across the small village of Passwall, which rests at the bottom of a hill before the gates to Mania and Dementia. And here again there is a sense of being lost in time, as the architectural style of the buildings is very similar to that of a slum in 19th century London. The tall and narrow stone buildings with the rectangular windows is a style that is so far removed from what we see in Cyrodiil, which, funny enough, in some places has this sort of fantastical quality to it, whereas the buildings in the Shivering Isles feel more grounded in reality. Is this to suggest that our real world would feel more like a realm of madness to the average denizen of Cyrodiil? The people that you meet on either side of the wall all have very vibrant personalities, but most of them exude a threatening aura, whether they are upfront about it with you or they're manic in a way that you cannot predict their actions. Still, they are all so intriguing that you will want to hear everything that they have to say, even if at risk to yourself. And now let's talk about Mania and Dementia, or the two shades of madness. I will start with Dementia, since the Fringe and Passwall are characteristically like that side. You walk into a gloomy, dark world that looks wet, cold, and a lot like a swamp. You can almost feel the humidity in the air and smell the dampness of the ground, passing moss-covered rocks and the willow trees. And yet, there is a magic to it. There is something there that makes all of those features pleasant. It feels like a more humble version of the Isles, and there is something comforting about having more grounded expectations when it comes to the dangers that are surely lurking in this place. It's not trying to fool you or be something else. You will naturally feel that danger is to be expected here. Mania, on the other hand, is an immediate burst of color. This living autumnal vibe that welcomes you and reels you in. It feels like walking into a dream or a fairy tale. But do not be fooled by these enchanting landscapes, for it is often found in nature that the brighter and more saturated colors indicate a deadlier poison, like a warning sign to those who encounter it, or maybe a way to trick you to fall for it. The best part is when you combine both sides and you begin to see the contrast. Now, contrast is a tool that is often used by makeup artists, photographers, filmmakers, and painters to bring something out or highlight its beauty. Both sides complement each other in that you, as the player, can see the contrast and the difference between them. You take away one and you're left with only half the beauty and half the meaning of the Shivering Isles. On both sides you will find different types of flora. The Mania side will feature more brightly colored plants that stand out and make you want to gather them. The Dementia side features darker and less appealing specimens. Some of the flora found on the Isles serves as a good reminder that you're somewhere in a different reality, as it is so fantastical and sometimes grotesque that there can be no mistake. Some of the more memorable examples include the Letifer Orca planta and the mushroom tree saplings. Speaking of the mushroom trees, I've already mentioned them, but again, each side has trees that suit its location, golden colored mushroom heads in Mania, and a dreary tan colored mushroom in Dementia. Aside from the nature and the environment in the Shivering Isles, some of that strange beauty can be observed in the way that society is structured. I am referring to the main guardians and protectors of Sheogorath, the Golden Saints and the Dark Seducers. These are forms of humanoid Daedra that are devoted in servitude to the Mad God. The book Saints and Seducers by Angelikatosh Marie seems to suggest that the Mad God tricked them into becoming so loyal to him, as the source of their allegiance is unknown, but I feel like a connection can be made to understand why they serve him so. In the same book, the author makes the observation that the societies of both the Seducers and the Saints share many similarities, though they are rival to each other. The main common denominator here is that both societies are matriarchal, and women are seen as superior to men. There are in fact male Saints and Seducers, but we can see even in the armor that the women tend to look more intimidating and imposing, while their male counterparts look almost emasculated and more vulnerable in what they wear. Because of the matriarchal nature of their societies, it would be important for the Saints and Seducers to take part in a world where women command the highest respect, and so Sheogorath has them as his main guards and protectors. If you contrast this with Cyrodiil, most of the guards in the cities are all male, with the exception of the Blades who are sworn to protect the Emperor, and it is unheard of to see an all-female-led military. Even in their realms, most humanoid Daedra that you meet on the front lines are male, so the trust that Sheogorath has put on them is likely a big reason why they are so devoted. As to his own intentions, it is perhaps the need to surround himself with beautiful things. Just as his realm is visually stunning, he has beautiful women protecting him. The Shivering Isles are a lot like Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. A mad world where time is relative and distorted, a ruler that has only one way of settling all difficulties, great or small. And while there are a lot of similarities that we can find between Alice in Wonderland and the Shivering Isles, which clearly took inspiration from the former, I prefer to look at it as its own separate thing, just to make things more interesting from an Elder Scrolls point of view. That said, it is definitely important to mention that particular influence. Finally, I want to talk about New Sheoth, the capital city of the Isles. The city rests on the border between Mania and Dementia, and it is split in two sides. The Mania side is called Bliss, and the Dementia side is called Crucible. New Sheoth is a beautiful city, certainly trying to show a more run-down version on the Crucible side, but it retains that swampy aesthetic that is sort of cozy for the layout of the city, even if there is a clear attempt to make it less appealing. Bliss, then, is like a fairy tale. You'd never guess that this place was somehow wrong or that there was anything mad about it. Simply a beautiful fantasy world in that Victorian-type setting. A work of art in its own right. You then have the New Sheoth Palace, where you can see the clear divide between the two shades of madness with seemingly no barriers. The palace itself looks almost like a Gothic cathedral, and there inside sits the Daedric Prince of Madness himself, Sheogorath. His throne room is split in two, and he comfortably rests in the middle, the madness of this duality coming together in his work, his pride and joy. It is important to mention that both sides, Mania and Dementia, do value beauty or art in either case, as you will find tapestries, busts of Sheogorath, and paintings of the landscapes from the respective sides. I have a more detailed breakdown of the art in Oblivion on my channel if you wanted to go check that out. And that covers the strange beauty of the Shivering Isles. I also think the Shivering Isles are one of the most beautiful fantasy worlds, even if it isn't entirely original. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I want to say a huge thank you for 70,000 subscribers. I really am humbled and I'm very grateful. Thank you so much for joining. You're all very welcome to the channel. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new here, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Be seeing you. Bye!